Good morning. It was 22 years ago when I stumbled in that door and I sat on that back row. I was hungover. I reeked of cigarette smoke. I was a mess. And back then, Pastor Mike was preaching, and as soon as the sermon would end, I would rush out that back door, get in my car, and take off. But there was one lady, without fail, every Sunday, that would chase me out the door. And she would chase me in the parking lot, and one day, she called me, "Melissa, Melissa!" And I turned around and I said, "My name is not Melissa. My name is Michelle." And she said, "I just wanted to invite you to the Friday night Bible study that we have at our house. And we're also going on this beach retreat. We'd love to have you come." And if you knew me then, I just said, "I didn't come here to make friends. I'm sorry." Turned around, got in my car, and drove away. Well, if any of you know Betty Scruggs, she didn't let that go. She continued every Sunday to chase me into the parking lot. And eventually, I made it to her Friday night Bible study, and I joined them on the beach retreat. My life was in shambles at that time. I was knee-deep in sin, and I felt so guilty. I felt like such a bad girl. And I can remember, even while God was working through me in the Bible study and working in me, I can remember saying to Betty, "Betty, you just don't understand, I'm bad." And she would say, "Leave it at the cross. You are forgiven. Leave it at the cross." That was so hard for me to take because I truly had this sense that I was a bad, bad girl. But eventually, I met my good husband, and we got married, and we had our own family, started having our kids, and life got busy, and I started to come to church more and do more, show up, do all kinds of things, sign up. I was there, but I always had a smile on, and that was my mask. I pretended like everything was fine, and I was finally starting to fit in with the people. I felt like I was good. I fit in fine. I'm doing the right things. I'm good. And then one Sunday, one of my friends came up behind me and she said, "Oh, by the way, you know that we call you and Anthony Mr. and Mrs. Crescent, right? We do that because y'all are so perfect and you have it all together." Ouch. 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 That hurt because I knew that I was so broken and I didn't have anything together. It made me realize that I really needed to do something with my life. I couldn't go around faking it. I couldn't go around smiling and pretending like all was okay. I was what you would call today a hot mess. I was having nightmares. I was having flashbacks and bad dreams. I would cry, and I couldn't tell anyone, no one. I couldn't tell them what was wrong with me. I couldn't tell anyone my secrets. I finally got so desperate that I went to see a counselor. And it was there with that Christian counselor that I was able to share in full detail all of my history. And I shared with her how I was sexually abused throughout my entire childhood. And it was there that she sat with me every Thursday for over 3 years. And she helped me to process all of those painful memories. Light was finally shining into the darkness. His light was shining into the darkness, and it was showing me who my true identity was in Christ. I was not a bad girl. I was his daughter. I was his princess, and he was my king. Being in that also helped me to understand who Jesus is, and it taught me more about his character. He's a good Father. There's no darkness in him. None. No darkness. He's the beginning and the end. He never changes. He loves me. That's who God is. So as I learned all of these things about God and about myself, one of the things that I wanted to do when I started counseling was just get it over with. Fix me, do whatever it takes to make this end. Get me well, get me out of here. I don't have a lot of time and I don't want anybody to know, so do it fast. And I said, I can go ahead and just say I'm sorry and I can, forgive him and everything will be fine. And my wise counselor helped me understand that this was going to take time and that she was going to help me through it. And as we processed those painful memories, and I went back and relived some of the horrible things that happened to me, at times I felt bitter and really, really sad. At one point, I would tell you that I felt hatred. It was that bad. And I thought, and I said to her, I will never forgive what I went through. But God, only by his power and his amazing grace has he stepped into my life and into my heart, and he's taken away the bitterness, and he's taken away the anger, and he has replaced my rage with joy. He has helped me to forgive. By his power, not by my flesh, certainly not by my words, but simply by his power. So when I stepped in here 3 years ago, or 22 years ago, and I sat on that back row, I was alive and I was breathing, but I was covered, just like Lazarus was, in grave clothes. The sins of my past and all of the bad decisions that I made were wrapped around me. They were my grave clothes, and Jesus stepped into my life and he said, take them off. The shame from my past, from all of the sins that were committed against me, those were my grave clothes too. And Jesus stepped in and he said, take them off. The bitterness, the sadness, the anger, the rage, the unforgiveness, those were my grave clothes. But Jesus stepped in and said, take them off. And he removed them because that's who he is. And I believe he's still writing my story. And I believe there's more miracles to come because he's just that powerful. And I don't know what grave clothes you may be wearing today, but I know that he cares and he sees you and he wants to take them off. So if you're carrying the grave clothes of shame or guilt from your past, give them to him. Let him remove all of that from you. If you're carrying or harboring bitterness or unforgiveness in your heart, that leaks through. It affects you in ways that you probably don't even realize. Give it to God. Jesus can take your grave clothes off. Will you give them to him today? Thank you.